Hi and welcome to another very cool video regarding the new Swift programming language for macOS and iOS apps. So what we're going to do in this tutorial is really simple, but actually really fun because we're using the new programming language Swift. So what we're going to do is just create an iPhone app which switches from one image to another with a little fade animation, and I'm going to show you what you're going to need to do that. We will learn some of the key concepts and some of the key strategies developing applications with Swift. You're also going to see how to use your familiar Objective-C classes within Swift, and also some things that might look a little strange at first. So let's dive right into it. I already added those two images to my images folder here, so we can just start off with some properties that we're going to use in our application. So when you've watched the first video regarding Swift, then you know how to define a variable. And we will start by creating an image view, which is going to hold our two images. So let's say var image view of type UI image view. Let's directly initialize it using the constructor UI image view. And I also want to show you some concepts of Swift, which you already know from Objective-C. So what I'm going to do might not be the most efficient way to do an app like this. But you're going to explore many things that you might be familiar with, and you afterwards know how to deal with it in Swift. So let's add another property, background dictionary, which will store two string values, and this is a dictionary, so we initialize it with a dictionary constructor. So this dictionary actually will store the names to our files, to our two background images, and we will put this data into our dictionary in a moment. So let's first go into the viewDidLoad method and remove this comment here. You'll see it looks pretty familiar. We have the viewDidLoad method. We have the didReceive memory warning, except that the structure looks kind of different because of the reduced size and amount of code that you need to write this with this Swift programming language. So let us define a width and height of a view, which will contain our image view. So we use constants. First constant width, which is 320 pixels, and a height 568. And you see I have just by accident used semicolons, but it doesn't matter. You can write them. And let's give them a type of CG float, because we're going to use them within a CJ rect make statement. So let's create our dictionary and fill it with some data. We have our background dictionary, and I open these brackets, and let's put in the first key, which is called background 1, and the corresponding value is background 1, because this is the file name of my first background image. And let's do the same thing with background 2, which is corresponding with background 2. Now as you have seen here, we have also two button titles, which I'm going to store in an array. So let's create an array, button titles. And this time I'm not going to specify the variable type or the object type. I will just let Swift do its job and detect that this is actually an array. Well, now we have a dictionary which stores all our, both our background image file names, and we have an array which stores our button titles. So now let's create a view, a var view, which is a UI view. And now this time let's use a constructor which you are pretty familiar with, init with frame. But in Swift you do not need the init. You can just put a frame right into it using cgrect make with its origin at 0, 0, upper left corner, and width, our constant, and height, our other constant. And that's it. Now we've got our view. Let's now add this view to our subview, and now we will call the add subview method using dot syntax add subview view to our main view in our view controller. This is actually a single view application template within the Xcode 6 beta version. And we now have added our custom view to the view hierarchy within this view controller. Let's now get our background, first initial background image, say background image of type UI image. And this is a UI image named let's take our dictionary and just say background dict background 1. All right. Now let's add this image to our image view, which is image view, and we have to initialize our image view with a frame. So let's again use a constructor here with frame, and we can use the frame of our view here. And now let's put the image we just we got from our background image here as the image property of our image view. And now let's add this image view to our view. Again, I'm using this dot syntax to call a method, not the bracket syntax, from Objective-C. Let's call the, open the simulator, and we see our first background image within this view. Now let's add the buttons we want to create in this app using a for loop, and I'm going to write for I as the index in, and now watch new syntax 0 ... which means something like 2, from 0 to button titles count -1. So we iterate 2 times through this for loop. We have 2 objects within this array. We subtract 1, so we iterate 1 time with the index of 0 and a second time with the index of 1 through this loop. And now let's create a button. You're getting used to this new syntax pretty quickly, actually. UI button. And now we want to create a button with a system type, which is something like the rounded rect button. So UI button with type. and we want to use UI button type system. And we have to use the as keyword. We want to use this as a UI button. Now the button frame, let's give it a position of 0 and 0 for the as an initial value, and a width of 200 and a height of 20. And now let's give it a little more a little better position in the center. So let's say CG point make at the center of the view, actually, in X direction. And let's say we want to calculate, we need to define that as CG float value. Let's start at 100 pixels from the top and add the index times 50 so that the buttons have a gap of some pixels between them. All right, I missed this one. And we can go ahead and set the button title. So button dot set title, and the title actually is stored in our button titles array. So we can use button titles brackets and the index of our for loop, not image view. For state, UI control state, control state, normal. All right. Now let's give it little custom color like a white color, as you've seen in the example. Set title color, UI color, white color for state, UI control state. Whoops. UI control state normal. Now we want to do something actually when we press the button, and this should also look pretty familiar. We're going to use the add target method, which is self actually the target. And now you do not need the add selector syntax anymore. You just write the selector that you're going to call, and we have to write that method actually, but let's call it button clicked for UI control event, this time touch up. Touch up inside. Now we have our target. So something happens actually when we click on our button. And now let's give this button a tag so that we can identify it to change the image when we click on button 1, and to change to the other image when we click on button 2. So give it a tag i+1. And now let's add our button to our view. And just to see whether all this stuff works, let's start in the simulator. And as you can see, I shouldn't have done that. So let's comment this line out for a moment. You see, you also get this nice fading animation when you use this UI button type system here. And now it's time that we create our selector, actually, our function button clicked. So we define a function called button clicked, and as you know it from Objective-C, we have to put a button inside here, UI button, Zender, and that's it actually. Now we have our button clicked method, and we can check if this works using the print line command as a button clicked. Build that. Oh, I just... Now it's time that we create our button clicked method. So let's go ahead and write that method, button clicked. With its parameter, it's a sender as you know it from Objective-C, and it's a UI of type UI button. And to check if this works, let's just use the print line command and say button clicked. And run it again. And as you can see, we have our print line command executed, and we can see it in the console. So, what are we going to do with this method? Well, we want to change the image using a little animation. So let's first get the tag we have defined for our button by using the sender here. So we want to access our button, which is a UI button sender. Okay, and now we use our tag as an image selector, as say image selector, which is going to be a string. And as you know, our key for the dictionary starts with background, followed by a number 1 or 2, and now we are going to use this concatenation syntax of Swift, which is /button.tag. Cool. Now if we run our application again and we click on one of the buttons, when I've set a breakpoint here, and we take a look at it, then you can see that we have as image selector a string that consists of background, which is not correct, background, followed by the number by the button I'm clicking on, so button 1 or button 2. All right. Now let me remove this breakpoint again, and now it's time to change our background image using this nice fading animation corresponding to the button you have clicked. So let me just paste in the code for that so that I do not make too many mistakes here. We're just calling UI view animate with duration. You know this method, it's pretty familiar actually, but there are some differences though. You know that this method actually uses blocks, and in Objective-C a block looks something like this. In Swift, you actually just write a pair of curly braces to express that this is actually a block. And what we are doing here, we give that a duration of 0.4 seconds. We reduce the alpha value of our image view to 0 so that it fades out. When this is completed, we have another block here, which requires an underscore white space in, which is the underscore is a wildcard operator, and followed by this in. Self.imageView.image, and also mind that you have to use self within a block. If you don't use self, then you will get an error saying that reference to property enclosure requires explicit self to make capture semantic explicit. So let's add the self here again. And when the completion, when we are in the completion block, so when the first animation is finished, we're going to reset our image to the other image, not selected, using our dictionary, which then contains the proper file name for our images. And if this is done, then we start another animation animating our image view back in using the alpha value and setting this to 1. So if everything is all right, then we should have luck, and it looks that way. We can smoothly change the images, and you have written your first Swift application using just this amount of code. You've also seen how you can use a new syntax for a for loop. You have seen how to create a button using Swift, how to add a target, how to call a function from a button reacting to a control event, and you also have used dictionaries and arrays, everything using the new Swift syntax. So thanks for watching and have fun using Swift.